Why Stringer Bell bought Avon a home and then betrayed him. One of the strangest things Stringer Bell does in The Wire happens so quietly that it is easy to forget how strange it actually is. Avon comes home from prison, and Stringer has already prepared a new life for him. There is a beautiful waterfront apartment, legitimate money, expensive furniture, and a view of a Baltimore they once could only look at from the street. Stringer walks Avon through the place almost proudly. They have reached the stage where their money does not have to remain hidden inside safe houses and back rooms. They own property, they have investments, they can finally put things in their own names. Then, only a short time later, Stringer meets Bunny Colvin in a cemetery and gives him the location of Avon's wartime headquarters. He betrays the man he just welcomed home. It can make Stringer's gift seem fake in retrospect, as though he was already planning to remove Avon, and the apartment was some elaborate way of keeping him comfortable until that happened. I don't think that fits Stringer at all. I think the apartment was completely sincere. Stringer genuinely loved Avon. He genuinely wanted him home. He also genuinely reached the conclusion that Avon could no longer be allowed to run the organization. Those feelings existed at the same time. Understanding how Stringer gets there requires going much further back, because Avon and Stringer were never simply a boss and his second in command. They built something together long before we meet them. By the beginning of The Wire, the difficult part appears to be finished. They control the towers and the pit. They have soldiers, stash houses, lawyers, and enough insulation that the Baltimore Police Department barely has a photograph of Avon. The organization already looks established because Avon and Stringer spent years doing the work that came before it. Their personalities also fit together extremely well during that climb. Avon understands the street almost instinctively. He understands reputation, territory, fear, loyalty, and the small signals that tell everyone who has power. When Omar robs one of his stash houses, Avon understands immediately that the money is only part of the problem. Somebody has openly challenged the Barksdale name. Every dealer in West Baltimore is going to watch what happens next. Stringer tends to approach the same problems through structure. He thinks about exposure. He thinks about communication. He worries about people saying names over telephones. He wants meetings organized properly. He teaches the crew to separate themselves from the product and tries to turn a group of drug dealers into something resembling an actual company. Avon knows how to become king. Stringer knows how to build a kingdom around him. That arrangement works because neither man originally needs the other to become something different. Stringer can worry about organization because Avon handles the authority. Avon can focus on the street because Stringer handles much of the machinery underneath him. When Stringer wants to approach Omar carefully, Avon can push for a more aggressive response. When Avon exposes himself too much, Stringer can pull him back. During the first season, Stringer even helps convince Avon to distance himself further from the daily operation as police pressure increases. Their entire business is built around the idea that Avon should become difficult to touch. That matters later. Stringer eventually betrays Avon by giving police his location, yet Stringer spent years designing an organization specifically intended to keep police away from Avon. Something had to change dramatically for him to cross that line. Prison is where the separation really begins. Avon goes away. Stringer stays outside. For the first time, Stringer gets to operate the organization without Avon standing next to him. Season 2 gives him an ugly situation to manage. The Barksdales have lost their reliable supply. Their product is weak. Their territory still has value, although the name attached to that territory means less when customers can get better heroin somewhere else. Proposition Joe recognizes the weakness immediately. Joe has access to better product through the Greeks. He is willing to share it. The price is access to Barksdale territory. For Stringer, the answer is almost painfully obvious. Take the good product, share the territory, make more money. Avon cannot accept the deal that easily because Avon understands territory differently. Those towers were fought for. Men died for them. Once another organization gets access, removing them later becomes much more complicated. Avon also knows that appearing weak invites people to test you again. This is one of the first major places where their different personalities stop helping each other and begin creating two incompatible strategies. Stringer has started thinking about the drug trade as a market. Avon still understands it as territory controlled through power. The important thing is that Stringer eventually goes around him. Avon sends Brother Malzone from New York to protect the towers and stop Proposition Joe's people from operating there. Stringer realizes Malzone's presence will destroy the arrangement he has built with Joe. Instead of accepting Avon's decision, Stringer secretly manipulates Omar into believing that Malzone was responsible for the torture and murder of Brandon. Omar shoots Malzone. Stringer has now interfered with one of Avon's decisions at an extremely serious level. Avon ordered Malzone into Baltimore. Stringer found a way to remove him without telling Avon. The deception works for a while, and Stringer gets the business arrangement he wanted. It also creates a debt that will eventually come back for him. Mouzon survives, discovers the truth, and later returns demanding that Avon answer for what Stringer did. Stringer gets away with his decision long enough for it to reinforce something dangerous in him. He starts believing that Avon is the obstacle. Stringer is taking economics classes. He is studying legitimate business. He creates the New Day Co-op, where Baltimore dealers can share suppliers and reduce unnecessary violence. He starts investing drug money into real estate and development. The organization slowly becomes something Avon probably never imagined when they were young. Stringer has enough money to stop behaving like a drug dealer who happens to own businesses. He wants to become a businessman whose original capital happened to come from drugs. That difference grows inside him throughout the series. Even his relationship with violence changes. Stringer is certainly capable of murder. He orders people killed when he believes they threaten the organization. He arranges Wallace's death. He eventually makes the decision to have D'Angelo killed in prison after becoming convinced D'Angelo may cooperate. Yet Stringer increasingly wants violence to have an identifiable financial purpose. War over reputation frustrates him. Bodies create investigations. Investigations create surveillance. Surveillance threatens money that could already be sitting safely inside legitimate property. Avon has a different relationship with the same danger. Avon likes money. He enjoys success. He appreciates the legitimate investments Stringer creates. He simply never considers money the final measurement of victory. That becomes obvious once he comes home. Stringer attends Avon's welcome home celebration, surrounded by people from his increasingly legitimate business world. Maurice Levy is there. Developer Andy Krochek is there. Senator Clay Davis is there. Stringer has spent Avon's prison sentence since entering rooms that the old Barksdale organization could never enter. He takes Avon aside and shows him his new waterfront apartment. Stringer explains that they have enough legitimate money now to display wealth openly. They can own things. They do not have to behave like men carrying drug cash that can disappear the moment police kick down a door. I think Stringer is showing Avon much more than an apartment. He is showing him the exit. This is the reward. They spent years standing in funeral homes, strip clubs, stash houses, and empty parking lots, talking about money they could barely enjoy without attracting attention. They watched friends die. Avon went to prison. D'Angelo went to prison. Weebay disappeared into a life sentence. Stringer looks around that apartment and sees proof that all of it eventually produced something permanent. Property cannot get shot on a corner. A development project does not need muscle standing beside it. A building can keep producing money while Stringer sleeps. He wants Avon to understand that they have reached the stage where winning should mean keeping what they already earned. Avon appreciates the place. He just does not experience the same revelation. That becomes the tragedy of their final season together. The apartment that Stringer gives Avon represents the future Stringer wants them to share. Avon moves into it while remaining fundamentally the same man. And soon Marlo Stanfield gives him a reason to prove it. Marlo is young, aggressive, and uninterested in joining Stringer's system. Stringer approaches him with the same logic that has worked elsewhere. There is enough money for everybody. The co-op can provide better product. Cooperation reduces bodies and police attention. Marlo is interested in owning his corners. Stringer sees a stubborn young dealer refusing free money. Avon recognizes another gangster immediately. Marlo is building a name. Ignoring him will give him space to build it. Once Avon decides Marlo has to be challenged, the Barksdale organization begins preparing for war. This is where Stringer's dream starts collapsing. Money gets diverted into soldiers and weapons. Bodies begin accumulating. Slim Charles is brought in to organize muscle. Avon treats the conflict as a necessary fight over control of West Baltimore. Stringer sees his entire business being dragged backward. He has spent years trying to create an organization where territory matters less because everybody can make money from the same supply. Avon returns from prison and starts risking that arrangement over corners Stringer no longer believes they need. There is a scene during their arguments where Avon finally describes the difference between them with painful accuracy. Avon admits he is simply a gangster. Stringer has become the man in the suit. Avon understands himself perfectly. Stringer has more difficulty doing the same. He thinks he has moved beyond the rules of the street, yet every time the legitimate world humiliates him, the old instincts come straight back. Clay Davis becomes the clearest example. Stringer pours money into political connections because he believes Davis can help move his development projects. Davis keeps asking for money. Stringer keeps paying. Eventually, Maurice Levy explains that Stringer has been conned. There was no sophisticated political strategy. Clay saw a drug dealer with money and took him for it. Stringer is furious. His response is almost funny considering everything he has been preaching. The man who spends years telling Avon to stop solving business problems through street violence immediately wants Clay Davis killed. Avon has to explain why this is insane. Davis is a state senator. Killing him would bring attention from agencies far beyond Baltimore homicide detectives. Avon mocks Stringer's attempt to play businessman and reminds him that if somebody cheated him in business, he has to deal with it as a businessman. It is one of the cruelest moments between them because Avon has found the exact insecurity Stringer has been trying to outrun. Stringer believes Avon is too trapped inside the street. Avon has just watched Stringer discover that wearing a suit does not automatically mean the people downtown consider him their equal. Their partnership has reached a place where each man can clearly see the other's weakness. The relationship becomes even more damaged when D'Angelo finally comes between them. Avon still believes his nephew committed suicide in prison. Stringer eventually tells him the truth. He ordered D'Angelo killed. Stringer explains the decision through risk. D'Angelo had isolated himself from the family. He had already written the letter that helped reduce his mother's involvement in the organization. Stringer feared that sooner or later, D'Angelo could become a problem, so he handled it. Avon hears that explanation as something much more personal. D'Angelo was family. Stringer made the decision without him. For years, these two men survived because each understood where the other's authority ended. Stringer has now decided that his judgment can override Avon's on territory, suppliers, and even the life of Avon's nephew. That argument ends with Avon forcing Stringer to confront something he has spent years avoiding. Maybe Stringer is caught between worlds. He does not fully belong downtown. He is also losing his instinct for the street. The apartment suddenly becomes much more important. When Stringer first shows it to Avon, he believes he is bringing his oldest friend into the life he has built. By the end of the season, he realizes Avon has brought the old life right through the front door with him. And eventually, Stringer decides to remove Avon. He contacts Bunny Colvin. The choice of Colvin is important. Stringer has learned about Amsterdam, where Colvin has effectively created zones in which drug dealing is tolerated so his district can reduce violence elsewhere. Stringer recognizes a man who is willing to ignore the traditional rules when those rules stop producing useful results. That is very close to how Stringer sees himself. So he meets Colvin privately in a cemetery. Stringer tells him where Avon is operating during the war with Marlowe. He gives him the location of the safe house, where Avon and his soldiers are gathering weapons and preparing their attack. There is one part of the conversation that explains almost everything about the apartment. Stringer tries to limit the damage. He does not ask Colvin to bury Avon. He wants Avon arrested, and he tries to get some assurance that Avon's sentence will remain relatively short, preferably under 5 years. Colvin cannot really promise him that. Stringer still asks. That request matters. Stringer wants Avon removed from the board. He still wants Avon to come home again. In Stringer's mind, he has probably found the cleanest available solution to an impossible problem. Avon will not stop the war. Stringer cannot overpower Avon inside the organization. The co-op is being endangered by the Barksdale conflict with Marlowe. Their soldiers are dying. Their legitimate money is exposed. Stringer has already tried arguing with Avon and failed, so prison becomes Stringer's solution. He has watched the organization survive Avon's first sentence. In fact, from Stringer's perspective, the organization changed dramatically while Avon was inside. The supply problem was solved. The co-op emerged. Legitimate investments expanded. Stringer learned that he could operate without Avon standing beside him. Now he wants to do it again. Send Avon away for a few years. End the war. Protect the business. Keep Avon alive. Let him come home when everything is settled down. It is an extraordinarily arrogant decision, because Stringer has appointed himself the person allowed to decide what is best for Avon. It is also very consistent with the way their relationship has developed. Stringer has been doing versions of this for years. Avon rejects Proposition Joe's arrangement, so Stringer makes it happen anyway. Avon brings Brother Malzone into Baltimore, so Stringer secretly removes him. Avon cannot bring himself to deal with D'Angelo, so Stringer makes the decision for him. Avon refuses to stop fighting Marlowe, so Stringer arranges for the police to stop him. Each decision gets larger. By the time he sits down with Colvin, betraying Avon probably feels less like a sudden violation to Stringer and more like the final version of a responsibility he has already assumed. He keeps deciding that Avon cannot see the larger picture. Eventually, the only way to protect their future is to protect it from Avon himself. The house makes sense inside that same mentality. Stringer bought Avon a place because he wanted Avon in that future. He gave Avon to the police because Avon refused to live according to it. That is why I don't think the apartment was guilt. The timing is too revealing. When Stringer brings Avon home, he still believes they can make this work. The legitimate money is growing. The co-op exists. The Barksdale name still carries weight. Stringer can imagine Avon enjoying the rewards while Stringer handles the business. He basically wants Avon to retire without calling it retirement. Avon can have the beautiful apartment, he can have money, he can have women, he can have status. He can enjoy everything they used to dream about. Stringer just needs him to stop behaving like he still has something to prove on a West Baltimore corner, and Avon cannot do that. Avon's idea of himself is connected to the game. When Stringer looks at a waterfront property, he sees a rival. When Avon looks at Marlowe standing on territory that once belonged to the Barksdales, he sees unfinished business. Neither one can make the other understand why that matters so much. The cruelest part is that while Stringer is arranging Avon's arrest, Avon is being forced into his own betrayal. Brother Mouzone returns. By this point, he knows Stringer manipulated Omar into shooting him. Mouzone confronts Avon and makes the situation simple. Avon's reputation with New York depends on his word. Stringer violated that word by setting Mouzone up. Avon tries money, Mouzone refuses. The debt requires Stringer. Avon eventually gives him up. That parallel is one of the best things The Wire ever does with these two characters. Stringer betrays Avon because he believes the organization cannot survive Avon's decisions. Avon betrays Stringer because his organization cannot survive. The damage Stringer has done to his reputation. Each man sacrifices the other to protect the version of the organization he understands, and neither knows yet that the other has made the same choice. Their final conversation happens inside the world Stringer wanted. They stand high above Baltimore at Avon's apartment, drinking together and looking across the city. Avon starts remembering when they were young. He brings up the stupid things they used to steal. He remembers Stringer trying to take a badminton set. There is something almost ridiculous about it. These men now control millions of dollars and are standing inside prime waterfront property, and Avon wants to talk about being kids, stealing whatever they could get their hands on. Stringer keeps looking toward the future. He talks about property. He thinks about what they could have bought if they had possessed this kind of money earlier. Avon asks him to forget that for a minute and dream with him. Stringer answers that they do not need to dream anymore. They have real things now, real estate, things they can touch. That exchange tells you where each man has ended up. Avon is thinking about the friendship. Stringer is thinking about what the friendship produced. Avon wants a few minutes with the boy he grew up with. Stringer wants Avon to look around the apartment and understand that the dream already came true. And sitting underneath the entire conversation are two betrayals. Stringer has already given Colvin Avon's location. Avon has already agreed to give Mouzone access to Stringer. Avon casually asks Stringer about his schedule the following day. Stringer tells him he will be at the development site. Avon now has the information Mouzone needs. A few moments later, they embrace. That hug is painful because the affection has survived everything else. Avon did not suddenly stop loving Stringer when Mouzone demanded him. Stringer did not stop loving Avon when he spoke to Colvin. They have reached a situation where love is no longer enough to keep their interests aligned. The following day, Omar and brother Mouzone trap Stringer inside his development project. When Stringer realizes there is no way out, he tries one final argument. He tells them he has money. He has value. He is involved in legitimate business. Omar tells him Avon gave him up. Stringer understands immediately. There is nothing left to negotiate. He tells them to finish it. After Stringer dies, the police eventually raid Avon's safe house using the information Stringer provided. McNulty later makes sure Avon understands how they found him. Stringer gave him up. By then, both betrayals have succeeded. One friend is dead. The other is back in prison. And that waterfront apartment is still there. That is why I think the apartment might be one of the most important things Stringer ever gives Avon. Stringer had spent his entire adult life trying to turn temporary power into something permanent. Corners can disappear. Crews can collapse. Product can dry up. People can cooperate with police. A building remains. When he gives Avon that home, Stringer is essentially saying that they finally made it far enough to own something that the street did not completely control. He wants Avon to see that as victory. Avon never fully does. There is also something sad about the possibility that Stringer never intended to leave Avon behind at all. He wanted to bring him along. He wanted the Barksdale organization to slowly transform into legitimate wealth while the drug business became quieter, more cooperative, and less important. Avon could have lived extremely well inside that arrangement. He simply would have stopped being Avon Barksdale. Stringer never understood how large a sacrifice that actually was. The same failure works in the opposite direction. Avon expected Stringer to remember that the legitimate businesses existed because of the power they built on the street. The suits, properties, and politicians were extensions of that power. Avon never believed they replaced it. Stringer wanted the extension to become the whole thing. By season 3, they are almost speaking two different languages. Avon talks about corners. Stringer talks about market share. Avon talks about reputation. Stringer talks about product. Avon sees Marlowe refusing to respect him. Stringer sees Marlowe interfering with revenue. Stringer sees Clay Davis as part of a business strategy until Davis humiliates him. Avon understands immediately that Stringer has wandered into a game whose rules he does not know. The friendship keeps them together long after the partnership has stopped making sense. That is where the house fits. It is Stringer's last serious attempt to make their personal relationship and his new ambition occupy the same place. Here's your home, here's your money, here's the city from above. Look at what we built. Stay here with me. Avon takes the home. He cannot accept the life attached to it. Once Stringer finally understands that, he makes the worst decision available to him. He decides he can preserve the future by temporarily removing the person he built that future with. He gives Bunny the address, and even while doing it, he tries to make sure Avon will eventually return. That is the contradiction that makes Stringer's betrayal so much better than a simple story about greed or ambition. Stringer never stopped caring about Avon. He stopped believing Avon should have control. Avon eventually reaches the same conclusion from the opposite direction. He still loves Stringer. He can no longer protect him. Their final night together therefore feels strangely gentle. Neither man screams. Neither exposes the other. Neither gets one final victory. They drink. They remember being young. They look at Baltimore. They hug. Stringer walks out toward the development project he believes represents his future. Avon stays inside the home Stringer gave him. By the following day, Stringer is dead, and soon afterward, Avon is going back to prison. The apartment survives both of them, and I think that is exactly why Stringer bought it. He believed things like that were the part that lasted. In the end, he was right about the building. He was wrong about almost everything else.